So welcome everybody to the Primary Care Commissioning Committee meeting held in public. Apologies for absence, please, Sue.
Apologies from members from Jackie Cairns, Oliver Wood, Bill Cunliffe, from attendees Siobhan O'Neill and David Steele.
Thank you. And we are quorate. And do we have any declarations of interest that are not included in the register? No. There's one item on our actions log which Dominic's going to cover under item 7.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I should have gone to the previous minutes. Apologies. Does anybody have any observations on the minutes of the meeting of the 30th of March? Is everybody happy to accept those as an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you. So we'll start with item 6, Jill, the budget. You muted, Jill.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I've got there. Okay, well, I think it was just a verbal update for now. I mean, just to reflect on the previous year's outturn, 2020-21, we have a pre-audit outturn of a underspend of 25,000 on the primary care budget, which is slightly less than perhaps has previously been indicated. I think just some adjustment on rent reviews that came through late on, but obviously that's still going through the audit process now. We're just commencing with our external auditors. In terms of 2021-22, the planning round is a little delayed on where it would be normally. So we have a deadline to get a financial plan together across our whole ICS and ICP area by the 6th of May. So that work is ongoing and pretty focused now. Having said that, we're still anticipating that our primary care allocation will be pretty much as we would have anticipated it, apart from we'll only get a 6-month allocation at this stage. So we'll get a funding allocation for April to September, and then we'll move on to a different basis for the second half of the year. That's in common with the vast majority of the NHS finance framework for this year, the one exception being mental health finance planning, which we're doing on a full year basis. I guess really just to add that following that wider plan by the 6th of May, we'll then look to pull together a detailed budget proposal for the primary care co-commissioning budget, spending some time working with Dominic and Philippa and Ros over the next couple of weeks, and bring that paper back to the next meeting on the 25th of May to run through that in any detail, highlighting risks and opportunities. You know, I'm expecting that we shouldn't be facing significant financial pressures in the primary care co-commission this year, but we should be able to highlight issues of either potential underspends or pressures when we bring that paper back.
Anybody have any questions for Jill? No,
just one, Chair.
Yes, go on, John.
Yeah, sorry, Jill. You just mentioned it's up to 6 months, up to September. So are we still kind of waiting for guidance in terms of what the ranges will be from that point onwards, or you know what's the position likely to be? Do you know, just out of interest, really?
Yes, we are waiting for guidance.
Okay.
I mean, in some ways, it was fairly late when we got to understand that we were going to get 6 months budget this year rather than even potentially just the first quarter. It could roll on the same basis for the second half of the year, or it could revert to the allocations policy that it would have been if we hadn't had the pandemic. But no, we don't have any guidance on that yet.
Thank you, Dominic.
So it's just a comment really to say that the fullest commitment and deployment of our budget represents the fullest opportunity for primary care to be delivered to our patients. So it's always our aim to commit the budget as fully as possible, and with a £70 million approximate budget for primary care commissioning, to end the year with a small surplus, I think is a very strong position to end in. So I just want to express my pleasure that we're able to report that position at this point.
Yeah, thank you. No mean feat bringing it in so close to budget with so much uncertainty. And as you say, those last minute things like the rent reviews and all those things that just have the ability to undermine all your prudent and careful work. So well done. And it's testament as well to the budget assumptions that are made at the beginning of the year. I think, you know, we've got a great staff team with a great deal of knowledge and skill in making those budget assumptions, and somehow we need to preserve that learning when we hand over the statutory duty to whoever's going to take it on in 12 months' time, so that they're able to continue that good budgeting discipline. Jill.
It was really just to add that our colleagues at NHS England, you know, really support us very well in that, and they are well experienced in this area. Gillian, who's come to this meeting sometimes, and I was going to ask her along next meeting when we're going through the budget in more detail, because that's really invaluable in terms of putting it together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the update. Any further questions? Other committee happy to note the update from Jill for the minutes. Thank you. Annual health checks. Dominic.
Thanks, Jeff. So when the DES for the Learning Disability Annual Health Check was first established, there was an ambition set that 75% of people with a learning disability on GP registers would get a health check. And for a number of years, right the way across the country, this has been a rather elusive target to reach. And in acknowledgement of the COVID pandemic, nationally, the achievement level was lowered slightly to 67%, given that there was acknowledgement that it might be difficult to do the checks remotely or encourage people to come to practices with fear of catching the infection. But nevertheless, there was an emphasis put on trying to achieve a target of 67% in full recognition that people with learning disability have additional vulnerabilities and premature mortality. So with that national guidance and with a huge amount of work from Claire Deval in our corporate team, Claire Scarlett, who's our clinical lead for learning disability, and our network facilitators, we produced quite a lot of support material. We produced webinars where we showed practices how to use the templates and discuss some of their challenges and difficulties. And there was a very concerted effort involving a lot of people across the whole CCG to try and achieve that 67% target. There was some discussion, I think, earlier in the year that it wasn't looking like we were going to manage it, and should we outsource it to other providers other than general practice, which we resisted. And I'm very happy to report that the end of year full achievement for the CCG was actually in excess of the 67% target. We achieved 78% target overall, and I think that was a stunning achievement. Gateshead achieved 82% for their final tally, and Newcastle 74% for their final tally. So both localities above the national target. There was an additional target set for primary care networks as part of their Improvement in Impact Fund, that if a PCN reached 80% achievement, that they would receive additional funding. Now, the funding is guaranteed anyway because of the COVID pandemic this year, but it's going to be the same target for the Improvement in Investment, the Impact and Investment Fund next year. And we had 6 primary care networks that achieved over the 80% target, so that bodes really well, I think, for next year's Impact and Investment Fund. And then there were a further 3 who were just off the 80%. So that's really, really positive news. We only had 15 practices that fell below the 67% target. And we even had 3 practices that achieved 100% target. So we've now written to every single practice, giving them their end of year tally and offering them additional support should they feel they need it, but congratulating them for their hard work. Also pointing out that this isn't just about the targets. 2,579 people who have additional vulnerabilities have had a very comprehensive and thorough health check. And whilst we haven't quality assured every check, we've had lots of feedback from practices indicating that a number of additional health problems that might have gone unrecognised have been uncovered through these checks, and the appropriate onward referral and support has been sought. So we really do think that this is something to celebrate. We're delighted with the achievements and we're ambitious that we're going to go even further next year.
Thanks, Dominic. Have you had any feedback from any patients?
Not directly, no. I mean, so I've done checks myself, and some of the anecdotal feedback I've got is that certain people were actually really pleased to have remote options for their checks and to have them done via video. People seem very pleased with the health action plans that we can produce from the templates. So that's the only feedback I've had. I don't know if Georgina has had the opportunity to get any feedback from her practice, but no other direct feedback to the CCG.
Yeah, I think our patients were just pleased that we were carrying on doing them, and that there was face-to-face elements for it, for all of this as well. So yeah, I think they were really well received. I mean, they usually are, but I think particularly with the challenges that general practice had over the last 12 months, they were really well received that we were still continuing to do them and some high targets as well.
And, you know, I certainly had representation from a few practices in January that felt that there was no chance that they were going to reach the target, and they were very anxious, particularly with their responding to the pandemic. And it was really very satisfying for them and us to sort of help break the problem down, help them think of solutions to doing them, help them use the additional resource that they had on top of the resource that they were getting for doing the checks. And some practices that absolutely didn't think it was possible pulled it out of the bag, and I think they were delighted themselves to see that was possible. We'd also budgeted for this additional success, because clearly this comes through our primary care budget, and we've never had to fully commit the budget previously because the achievement has never gone above 50%. So we did anticipate we might go higher, and we were able to meet the additional costs of paying for these checks to be done.
John?
Just a comment, really, Chair. I mean, I just remember about a year ago, Dominic saying at this committee about a year ago, saying that's something, the LD health checks are something we really need to look at and focus on as a system. And it's just a great success story that basically that we have actually achieved that over the year, despite COVID and everything else. So I think, yeah, it's absolutely a good example of working together to achieve that, and it's fantastic news.
Yeah, and I think there are additional opportunities to bring in some of the learning disability self-advocacy groups in both Newcastle and Gateshead in supporting the process and in supporting people. We are submitting a learning disability and autism plan to NHS England, and a lot of that does involve looking at some of the wider determinants of health, looking at housing, looking at employment opportunities, and we've certainly got lots to tell NHS England in terms of our plans, and weaving that into their health checks will be part of what we'll be wanting to do next year.
Yeah, and yeah, congratulations to everybody. And I think it would be nice if those results could be passed to Eugene Milne, because I remember Eugene being quite vocal about the statistics that were presented a couple of years ago, and how those statistics were arrived at, and I think the committee's collective understanding of the statistics was found to be not as good as it maybe could have been, and I think you showed that by putting it through under the lens. You can make massive improvements for the public and patients and those most vulnerable. So if someone could make sure Eugene is made aware of that, I'd be grateful. And yeah, thank you for the team. So my final question on that paper is, are there any themes behind the variation in performance from the those practices that were unable to reach the 57%, or was it 57%, and those that reached 100%? There's a massive variation, isn't there, across the patch? Is there any themes that we can identify?
Well, not specifically. I mean, if we look at the bottom 15, and clearly I wouldn't want to name practices in a public meeting, but some of the bottom 15 are practices that we've had lower quality indicator concerns about previously. So I think there is a correlation between those practices that struggle generally to deliver the highest quality of care and those practices that had lower attainment and achievement on the Learning Disability Annual Health Check. But having said that, there were some practices, particularly in some areas of high deprivation, that achieved remarkably. So in itself, it's not a reason not to do well. And we are going to be very positive and proactive in helping those practices that for whatever reason didn't achieve.
And is there some best practice to be identified and maybe some mentoring to be offered from those practices who excel?
I think there probably is, and we would have to listen to our facilitators to see what that best practice was, but that's certainly part of what we're going to be doing planning for next year.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions or observations on the report? And our committee happy to note the content of the report. Thank you very much. So, Ros, our internal audit report.
Yep, thanks, Jeff. Okay, so the paper that was attached obviously gives the outcome of the audit. Just as a bit of a background, there was a compliance audit for primary medical care carried out, which started back in July 2020. With CCG having responsibility for ensuring general practice is sustainable and provides high quality, safe care to the local population within the available budgets. This specific audit actually looked at finance and governance within primary care. The conclusion, I'm pleased to say, was that governance, risk management and control arrangements provided substantial assurance that risks identified are managed effectively. Compliance with the control framework was found to be taking place. This assurance also aligns to the NHS England category of full assurance. Audit only flagged one very minor issue to us, which was low priority, which was that evidence of the PCC minutes weren't being presented at governing body. So that's quite an easy issue to address and to take forward. I think it was just really to say thanks to everybody who took part in the audit. I know Jill had many meetings and provided a lot of evidence on the financial side. And obviously, because this audit actually encompasses sort of primary care committee, it's good to see that sort of, substantial assurance has been given on this occasion. So it's just really to update the group on that outcome.
Jill?
I suppose just picking up on what Ros has said, I mean, I do recognise really though that Ros yourself did provide a lot of the information, and also I relied significantly on Gillian Wood in NHS England too. It was perhaps unfortunate it took longer to carry out because I think we had a number of audits ongoing at the same time across our department. So perhaps we could have been through it quicker, but we got there in the end, so that was good.
Yes, thank you very much. As you say, Ros, it's nice to hear the word substantial assurance, isn't it? Yeah. Good. Anybody have any questions on the internal audit report? No. So that report will go forward to the governing body's audit committee at their next meeting, as well, with any with the minutes from this meeting, which will show that we have no further comment. But Philippa.
I don't know whether it came through in time. We have actually had the final report back where we put on our management responses, and I think Audit have sent that back. So we might want to send that one to governing body if that's not quite the same one that was on this report.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure Sue will take care of that for us. Sue?
Yes, I will do.
Thank you very much. Item 9, the primary care network DES sign up. Philippa.
Yep. So as I'm sure you're all aware, we introduced the role of PCNs way back in, believe it or not, July 2019. So annually we go through a process of ensuring that the practice makeup that sits underneath those PCNs has not changed, and that everybody is willing at a practice level to continue signing up to the PCN network DES. And therefore we have until the 30th of April to notify NHS England of any changes to our current makeup of our PCNs. Now, as you are aware, we have had a little bit of shuffling in the background with certain practices. So fundamentally, because of that, we have to notify NHS England of any particular changes. Not like they're not already aware of them all, because we've had an ongoing dialogue with them. It is just dotting the I's, crossing the T's. So the paper that you've got in front of you effectively just says that we've gone out to all the practices and the PCNs and just said, if there's any changes in your PCN, can you let us know, so that we can fill out the relevant piece of paperwork, get it signed off, and I can send it back to NHS England. Technically, every practice is rolled over into the network DES unless they say differently. So they have until the 30th of April. So that's why this is a draft sign up at the moment. They have until the 30th of April to come back to me to say they wish to withdraw from the network DES in 21-22. I'm not expecting any practice at this point, and I have certainly had no indication to that level that any practice is thinking of withdrawing. So I am making the assumption they're all going forward as they were. Just obviously for committee's knowledge, the changes that we have had, so we've had 9 PCNs who've made no changes to their PCN, so they will go forward as normal. Of the 3 that are remaining, obviously in Gateshead we have Central South PCN and Birtley Oxford Terrace PCN. Second Street moved from Central South to Birtley Oxford Terrace. The paperwork went through, so they should be in place from the 1st of April, and all the money should follow through there. The other one obviously is Newcastle Medical Centre in Newcastle, which we got agreement middle of last year that they would transfer into Newcastle East PCN. So Newcastle Medical has been sitting outside of PCN since they were initiated. So it is great to see that, having had them hosted by the East for the past couple of years, they've now developed the relationships such that they are now actually part of a full PCN. So that's great for their patients and for that PCN going forward. We've had a couple of other sort of background changes that don't make nominal changes to payments, for instance, but we like to keep NHS England aware of the processes. So from a Newcastle Inner West PCN point of view, we've had a change in clinical director. So Jane Carman left the role and Tafiq Pathan has taken over from the 1st of April, and we do thank Jane for her input into that role at that point. In Birtley Oxford Terrace, we did actually change CD middle of last year. We just didn't actually pick that up in terms of paperwork. So Dr. Alex Moore actually replaced both Jeremy and Dr. Peter Young middle of last year. So I flagged that up to NHS England just so they know. What I've written on there in terms of Gateshead Outer West, Samina Hassan has been doing a sterling job there, but she has been looking to get a replacement for her. Now, at the time I wrote the paper, it did look like a replacement had been found, but at the moment I think there's a little bit of capacity issues being still discussed. So at the moment, Samina is remaining as the clinical director whilst they work that one through with the other GPs in the Outer West. So at the moment, we will not be replacing Samina, bless her. I think she was looking forward to it, but at the moment we're keeping her, which, you know, I'm quite glad of, really. And the only other change is that one of basically the only PCN pretty much left in Newcastle, other than Savile, who do not work through NGPS from a finance point of view, have now moved their nominated bank account to an NGPS. So again, it's just a bureaucracy thing that sits behind the back. Obviously, they have until the 30th of April just to confirm all of these changes, and no, I'm not expecting anything else. Once I've got all of those changes completely confirmed, I'll obviously let NHS England know that we're moving forward and the state we're moving forward in. But fundamentally, I'm expecting all practices to be signed up to the network DES and moving forward in the structure of the PCNs as outlined in the paper there.
Thank you very much, Philippa. Anybody have any observations? No, was it really 18 months ago that we started that roller coaster?
Yep.
Yeah. But listening to a presentation at today's governing body development session about the way PCNs have developed, the future roles, the expansion program, the additional funding, the way to maximise services, it certainly seems like the PCNs are a good platform for improved service delivery. Definitely. So yeah, well done everybody there. Okay, if there's no further questions, everybody happy to note the contents of that report? Okay, that takes us to item 10, our vaccination programme update. Thank you for waiting patiently, Lynn.
So, yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. There's nothing terribly exciting to tell you, really. I mean, it continues to roll out well, and we are seeing the impact of the vaccination programme. So we had a very slight increase for a couple of days last week in the COVID rates, very, very small, which we predicted as schools went back. But we're seeing now the daily decline, and we're down to 17.3 per 100,000. Sorry, I've got builders on talking in the background, so it's going to be noisy. Bear with me. So the rate is really low. All of our GP practices are declaring Opal 1, and we've had no positive people in the QE in Gateshead for well over a week now. So that's really good news, and we're seeing sort of the outcome by the... Just a minute, just mute you a minute.
Thank you, Lynn.
So... Oh God, the story of my life. So by the end of last week, we'd done just under 130,000 vaccinations. So, you know, we're getting there, and that is plus whatever's been done in the Nightingale and the Centre for Life as well. And now that the national booking system has opened up, people can be sent anywhere. So I've heard of, you know, people being sent to Bishop Auckland, for example, for a vaccination, which is absolutely nuts when we've got capacity in our local sites. So the 5 local sites, which are Bladen, Bertley, Rowland Road, the Bede Centre down on the Old Fold Road, and Felon, are continuing to deliver. They've all signed up to go, you know, through cohorts 10 to 12, which is basically the rest of the population. And they're very slick. I did a shift in Felon Hub on Friday, and it was absolutely brilliant. Just, you know, they're just running like clockwork. There's my daughter singing in the background now. So, yeah, it's all going well. CBC have picked up the contract for Inner West, Outer West and Central South now, and they started their first clinic down in Bladen on Saturday. So those practices can now step back when...
Keep going, Lynn, it's all right.
This is my house normally. You'll hear the dogs barking in a minute, and the chickens crowing and the ducks clucking. So CBC picked up, they started on Saturday, and it just worked really well. So, you know, I have no doubt that we'll get through the cohorts. The aim is to get the rest of the cohorts finished by July. That's the national aim. We'll be through them well before then. The issue we have is being able to drop down through the age ranges, so we'll always feel as if we're being held back, you know, and waiting for other people to catch up. But the North East are the highest performing region in the country, and Gateshead are up in terms of numbers. We're up there, we've got the highest vaccination rate for care homes, so we're doing really good.
Good. And I assume it's a similar position in Newcastle.
I haven't
meeting
the
the
numbers.
And
Yeah, sorry, I picked up an email earlier saying could I do the Newcastle update, and I probably have got an update somewhere in all my papers, but it is very similar. They have continued, and you know, Christian and the Fed will continue to deliver cohorts 10 to 12. at, I'm not sure if it's at the racecourse or at their other mass site. I can't remember. It was the Eagles and the racecourse, wasn't it? I think they've dropped down to just the racecourse, perhaps. But again, you know, plenty of capacity to deliver for the rest of that population. So it's all good in terms of vaccinations.
Good.
And being a real success. What, you know, no doubt we'll be doing boosters come the autumn, and we'll think about that nearer the time. But I'm not envisaging that there's going to be any problems or issues in delivering that. And who knows, by then we'll probably be delivering them with the flu vaccinations out of practices.
So Georgina, does that mean there's lots of practices and lots of GPs now able to focus on something other than vaccinations?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly the staffing models have switched around slightly, and they're definitely taking the pressure back off the practices to allow the core practice staff back in to do the work they need to do. And I think people are finding working at the vaccination sites is quite a positive experience. So quite a number of people that are doing it, if they're part-time, they're doing it on days they wouldn't ordinarily work at the moment, because actually it's quite a good morale booster for them. It's a nice bit of work to do. So I think, yeah, it's an all-round positive experience, positive for the people coming through, and it's positive for the staff working there. And that's a nice place to be when you work in healthcare. Yeah, delivering some good news. Yeah, no, good. Thank you very much, Lynn. Are there any items of any other business? No. Our next meeting is Tuesday, May the 25th. Thank you everybody for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you then.